up? What's up?
What's up, guys? Welcome to this edition of This Week in Review. Of course, I'm your host, Brandon Choi, host and co-creator of Movers and Shakers Unlimited, and I am joined by...
Jerome Bourgeois, co-creator, co-founder, Movers Shakers Unlimited. How's everything going, man?
It's going well. It's going well. Happy Saturday. Hope you guys have been enjoying your week. There's so much to get into between trailers, between different things that have happened in the film TV world. But before we hop into those various topics, just a couple of reminders. Of course, if you're following along, not just with this live taping of This Week in Review. Make sure that you can, join the conversation with the hashtag that we use, which is TWnRMNSU. So that's This Week in Review, Movers and Shakers Unlimited. And of course, if you come across us or discover us, after the fact, be sure to utilize that hashtag as well, to keep a wind of, all the things that are, happening and going on. In addition to that, if you also enjoy a lot of the content that we do, make sure that you become a Patreon supporter with us as well. We do have some cool perks in place for those of us, or say for those of you that enjoy our content. So you can check out the link just down below. As you can see there, patreon.com, Movers and Shakers Unlimited. But with that out of the way, let's hop right into the stories that made the rounds this week. I'll start first with a trailer of a highly anticipated film from the DCEU, that being, of course, the Suicide Squad. This past week, we had a trailer that dropped that gave us a better look at Bloodsport, as well as some additional looks at not just some of the other characters of the Suicide Squad or the team members, but also another look at our big bad. So I will put it up here because maybe some of you do not want to know. Maybe some of you do not want to know who I'm talking about. But the person I'm talking about, of course, spoilers up here, is none other than Starro. So for those of you that are not familiar with Starro, he's a villain who is a Justice League of America villain. If I recall, he is the first. But the cool thing that can be utilized with him is that he has the ability to, mind control people. He has smaller versions of himself that can attach, to hosts and mind control people. So, in looking at this most recent trailer, Jerome, of the Suicide Squad, this soft reboot / sequel, if you will, of the original. What are your thoughts on what you saw?
I'm just laughing that you put spoilers up. I mean, it's a trailer, man.
Hey, I know, but I mean, maybe some people don't want to know.
They put it in. Yeah, it's a trailer. I mean, come on, they put it on the trailer. I mean, anyway, I'm
looking out for you guys. I know some of you don't want to know some of that.
It's in the trailer. They put it out, so it's not. Anyway,
but I digress. Go for it.
Just like why
go for it.
No, I think it looks great. Hey man, I just think it shows like you add James Gunn to the mix. This is perfect for him, and it shows. It's so funny when that whole controversy happened with Disney and letting him go from Guardians of the Galaxy. Then Warner Brothers scooped him up for this movie, and he put his style on it. And obviously he's going to do Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3 also. So it's like a double win for him. But yeah, I mean, after watching that trailer, I mean, yeah, it looks amazing. I mean, I just love how he has so many of these little minor characters, these ridiculous characters. I have no clue about some of them, but whatever. It looks crazy and wacky and amazing. And I'm like, I know a bunch of them are going to die probably violently. So it's great because that's, this is like the superhero version of kind of, like the Expendables / Dirty Dozen type. But yeah, that's what makes Suicide Squad so amazing. The whole idea of like these expendable villains who are doing the government's bidding, and there's stakes involved. It's not like they're and obviously they're like, I guess you could say anti-heroes, but really just people doing something for a transactional reason. But yeah, I think like the special effects and everything, just the tension, the setup. I mean, how they're like I said, I'm not as familiar with some of these characters, like even with Bloodsport, but I thought it was interesting. I like with the trailer, they're like, oh, he's responsible for putting Superman in I guess a coma or whatever with a kryptonite bullet. I was like,
Right,
okay,
and
yeah,
that is comic accurate. So I
that's
mean,
cool though. Yeah,
as
that's
obscure as
good.
he is, it's cool that they are still sticking with that and not going too far off the rails with some of the cool
Yeah, yeah.
aspects of a lot of these characters that some people may not necessarily know all the details about. So
And I
yeah,
like how
but
yeah, and I like how, like, I mean, obviously, like, of course we've seen King Shark in the CW, in the Flash, and that was pretty cool. And I remember seeing him in the animated Suicide Squad movie, and that was pretty good too. But it's like how they made him, like, I think it's gonna be funny how obviously he's like more larger than life too. It's not as of course, I mean, he's a humanoid shark. And it's so funny because until the very last line of the trailer, like, I was just like, oh, King Shark, okay, yeah, it's a funny line. But then I was like, oh snap, I looked back in IMDb, I was like, I forgot, yeah, Stallone is doing the voice of King Shark. So I was like, yeah, that was Stallone's voice. So
yeah, and I'm
yeah,
still I was gonna say, and speaking on that, it's going to be interesting because a lot of people were theorizing that Taika Waititi was going to be the voice of King Shark because we still don't know who he's playing, and I have a feeling that it may end up being Starro. Like if he ends up being
yeah,
Starro, please let him be Starro. That would be so hilarious to have. If we're picturing what's God, I'm brain farting on that character's name from Thor. If we have
oh,
that
what's his
uh,
name with the
uh,
G? I know. Oh, shit, I forgot his name. Oh yeah, I
but
know. Yeah,
if we have that level of humor or delivery with
I'm sure it's
Starro,
gonna be at that
even
level.
if he doesn't physically speak, maybe they'll do something where he's like speaking, telepathically, and he speaks that way. That would be that would be awesome. I hope so. I mean, as I said,
Well,
they haven't
Korg,
really
isn't it
nailed down
Korg?
who he's
What's his
playing,
name?
but he
Korg?
is in the film. If you want
What's
to
his
look,
name?
he's in the credits.
What's his name? Korg or something in the Avengers? I thought it was like Korg or something for
Yeah,
some
I want
reason.
to say yes. Well,
Something like
I'll look it
I
up.
think it
I'll
was
look it up
something like
while we're looking at
yeah.
other
I don't know.
story. But yes,
Anyway, but yeah.
yeah, but it would be
I don't know.
cool
I might have got that. I might
for
have butchered
sure.
that. But anyway, um, yeah. It's funny, but also I just like how it's a ridiculous villain that looks badass too. Because like I'm gonna be honest, like I'm not as familiar with the big starfish dude. I mean, that's what I was like. What the hell is this big starfish do? But it looked pretty awesome though, and to me that fits this movie. Like, have something ridiculous
You
but
have to
also
have
different. Has to
exactly.
be
You have to have
ridiculous
something ridiculous.
because in the last one, the problem with the last one, like, yeah, I guess that was the last one. The villain was kind of ridiculous in like in a bad way. So, because it was just, I don't know. To me, it just was the plot and everything towards the end was kind of goofy. Even though I like some of the characters and I like Will Smith and everything. I hope they bring him back for like another one. I'm also glad that they've done that, like, because I remember early reports where Idris Elba was supposed to replace him, but I'm glad they went with a totally different character because then they could bring him back maybe in another one. Um,
Definitely.
but it's good. You have Margot Robbie back. You get Rick Flag. Obviously Harley Quinn. You have Rick Flag back.
Captain Bullseye.
Yeah. Oh, Captain. No. What's his name? Captain
Captain
Boomerang.
Bullseye. Oh,
Boomerang. No,
Captain
Boomerang.
Boomerang. Got
I
it,
was
got
like,
it, got it.
Bullseye.
I'm
Nah,
saying
you're
Bullseye.
mixing. You're
Lord.
mixing
I'm
Daredevil
missing
with
it with Marvel. Wow, guys.
Captain
Boomerang.
Boomerang. Boomerang. Yeah,
Boomerang. Yeah.
ridiculous. Jai Courtney. Yeah, and then obviously Viola Davis is great as Amanda Waller. Um, so yeah, and it's R-rated. So hey, I'm looking forward to this. And yeah, I just like how he purposely James Gunn. You could tell he has like so many ridiculous characters I've never heard of. Maybe you have, but I'm like, I know like half of them or most of them, those guys are gonna die. So that's great.
Well, I'm
Except for
I
maybe the
love, and
Peacekeeper.
this
What's
is
his
a
name?
shot
Peacemaker.
of Starro, guys. But the thing that is cool, like that he had the balls to do is to, like, in talking about a lot of the characters that some folks may not be familiar with that are like absolutely ridiculous is Polka Dot Man. Like the fact that you have the character Polka Dot Man in this lineup is like utterly ridiculous. But I love that you have Polka Dot Man in there. Javelin, some of those other characters that, like I said, are super
Of course.
obscure, but it gives them an opportunity to really have fun with this film because people are not going to be emotionally tied to too deeply to the characters. They'll be interested in seeing, characters that they're not familiar with. And at the same time, should something happen to them, you don't have to worry about, it backfiring and people being, really upset about, their character, biting the bullet. So, but still, with that being said, I do recall them saying that with this film, they gave Gunn full license to,
Yeah, and
to
that's what
determine
you got to
who's going to
do.
die, even if they are like a quote unquote, A-list character. They may potentially die. I don't believe they're going to die, but the fact that they gave him the
I think
license
like
to do
half of
that
those guys
is
that got
pretty
probably. I think
awesome.
like half of them are gonna die, and that's great. Oh yeah, and his name was Korg. I looked it up again. Korg in the Marvel movie. So Taika Waititi doing the voice. So yeah, it'll be interesting. Yeah, I'm looking forward to
My
this.
name is Cole.
What's it called? And this is probably going to be the first HBO Max release that I don't care if it's on HBO Max. I'm seeing this in the theater, and
I'm seeing it in
I've been
theaters.
back to the theaters. I've been back to the theaters like for 3 movies. I think 3 movies already. So I'm ready to go. It's we're back to
And it's
normal.
coming soon. It'll
Yeah,
be, just
yeah.
as you were saying, it'll
August.
be on August 6th. So HBO Max and in theaters is doing that simultaneous, WB release that they are doing with some of their 2021 slate of films. So moving on from that, we also had a story surrounding Steven Spielberg. Apparently, there is a new distribution deal that is happening with Amblin and with Netflix. So, Jerome, you want to, take it?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, this is definitely a big story. I mean, it's a big shift in the Hollywood landscape. And I felt like, yeah, it was definitely important to highlight this because it is hilarious. Obviously, Steven Spielberg, he's like an iconic director, one of the best. I mean, I look up to him. I read his biography. I mean, he's the guy. Um, but it's funny because there was a period of time when there was this debate between old school directors like him,
Right.
and I don't blame them either. Were criticizing Netflix for getting accolades at the Oscars, even though the movies they've released theatrically technically were meeting the threshold and the guidelines of being at least released for a certain amount of weeks. They weren't primarily theatrical releases. So I think that was his main beef, even though he did say he wasn't against Netflix or nothing like that. He just had an issue with that, and that was like a big story. But then he said he has said that he doesn't mind stories being told on different formats, and as long as it's a great story, and that's fine. But it's always funny when you hear these comments, and then later on you're like, oh, they do a deal with he does a deal with Netflix. It's funny. I thought he was maybe gonna do a
Like,
deal with
oh, I didn't
like
say that. I didn't say
yeah,
that.
yeah,
But
yeah.
I'm
I mean,
like,
whatever. It's like whatever. I mean, I thought he was gonna do a deal maybe with Apple or something. Maybe that's why he was. You never know. But I mean, I think he has some projects on Apple maybe. But no, it's interesting because Netflix has come to the point now where like they're getting like some of the biggest directors from that we've known from Martin Scorsese, Spike Lee, obviously like Zack Snyder too. But yeah, now you're getting Steven Spielberg in addition to like these big TV showrunners, like Shonda Rhimes, Ryan Murphy. I mean, they had Kenya Barris. He left, but he's not with them anymore. But in that capacity, but yeah, I mean, they're getting a lot of these big filmmakers and big showrunners, and it's just interesting seeing how they added that to their portfolio. Now it's there's a deal where it's like they're gonna finance and distribute at least 2 films a year for Amblin. So it doesn't mean
right,
necessarily
right,
Spielberg's going to direct all of them, but he probably will direct some. And they've already collaborated with the Trial of the Chicago 7 because that was originally made, I think, for I think it was Paramount, and then they sold it to Netflix. So they've had because he was originally going to direct that movie, and then Aaron Sorkin ended up directing it. I mean, he wrote and directed it. So but yeah, it's interesting. So to me, it just makes me wonder, like, what type of movies are they gonna produce and release on Netflix? Are there gonna be more films that maybe Spielberg or Amblin don't think would maybe do as well theatrically? Are they gonna be big? Like, because that's the main thing that Netflix has been good at. Like, they have been the safe haven for these filmmakers to make like big passion projects that maybe no one else would have financed anywhere else because they think it's too risky or they don't think it'll do well theatrically or whatever. And that's why, like I said, I always go back to Martin Scorsese. Nobody was trying to finance The Irishman for a while, and that's why it took a while to make. And then Netflix was like, "Yeah, we'll do it," and they did it the way he wanted to do it. You know, with the de-aging process, because that technology, that using that type of CGI, that costs a lot of money, and for that type of movie being 3 hours or whatever, or over 3 hours, or close, you know. And then Spike Lee with the Five Bloods, the same thing. But they found a place on Netflix, and that's why these filmmakers are going there. They like the freedom they're getting and the budgets they're getting to make these movies, and they don't have to worry about box office as much. Even though that's not something really Spielberg has had to really worry about, but it does influence the type of movies you make, because Spielberg, he's one of the very rare breeds who can go back and forth between these big blockbuster movies and then these serious Oscar contenders, or these more dramatic, I guess. But people call them in the industry, they kind of call them like middle class, like the middle class movies, the mid budget
Yeah,
films,
the
because it's
mid-budget,
like
yeah.
it is true, they're kind of getting lost in the landscape where you have either really low budget films, maybe from 5 million to like 20 million, that might be theatrically released, and then you have the big budget 200 million and up superhero movies or whatever that have a big draw. But those movies kind of in between that are like 50 to 100 million, 50 to 80 million, that might be a drama or something serious or biopic, they're usually not really getting produced as much theatrically. So or financed for theatrical distribution. They're going more towards like a Netflix or HBO Max, or I mean, what is it, Hulu, or um, all these other streaming services. So it's interesting to see. Maybe he might switch it up. I don't know. You might see different projects, or maybe just Amblin in general. Just it's another outlet, because he still has a the company's still on the Universal lot, so it's not like they're still doing business with Universal and whoever else they want to do business with. But this is just an added, um, you know, part of their portfolio for, for distribution and financing, an added partner that they can work with. So it's going to be interesting to see what type of projects he might or his company is going to produce through Netflix. So
there are a couple of things that I find interesting about this story. The primary one that comes to mind for me is just kind of what we have been talking about in prior episodes, just about how the landscape of films and their theatrical run is constantly evolving and changing, thanks in large part to how the last year and a half has been, and how it has been reduced. And now you're seeing streamers. I mean, we were talking about it recently of another Netflix release. What was it?
Army of the Dead.
Army of the Dead, yeah. And how, you have its theatrical run initially, and that we may start seeing that trend of more films getting that are part of these streaming services getting that theatrical run, and then, being on the streamer. So I find that part of it interesting. The other part that I find interesting as well is that in thinking about, how this partnership or how this deal is going to work, I feel that it's a win-win for everybody, because in knowing, thinking how a lot of like producing deals work, especially when you're, thinking of like a household name of like Steven Spielberg, a lot of times you'll have people that, plaster their name on films and say that they are a producer, but it's really for the sake of whatever that project is, to, maybe help raise the profile of, a filmmaker maybe that doesn't have that household name. So you'll say, oh, it's from
Or
the mind of
EP.
so-and-so.
Yeah.
We saw it also with District 9. A lot of people
Yeah.
believe that Peter Jackson directed it, and he didn't, but his name is all over. His name is
Wow,
all over.
they didn't do their homework.
But
reading the credits.
I'm saying in terms of how
yeah,
it was promoted, like,
yeah, of course.
you can see how, perhaps if someone isn't really looking that deeply into it, they would just assume that, oh, he was the one who did that film, but he didn't. However, he shepherded that film, and, by putting his name on it, it allowed more eyes to get in front of it. So
Yeah.
while I believe that, it's not to say that I don't think Spielberg is not going to be producing actively some of these projects. I still believe that there will be a couple where he's just putting his name on there just to help shepherd some projects that, otherwise wouldn't get seen. So it provides an opportunity for, other other artists that are, trying to get their projects made, perhaps they'll be able to benefit, from that. And then at the same time, the really cynical me is also saying, okay, so they, based on what you were just discussing about the history, is that there must have been a whole truck of money that was just dumped in front,
Of
of
course,
Spielberg's house
of course.
to get him to change his tune.
But
So,
you got to remember, like it's not like Netflix is not playing on the same playing field as these studios. Like they have way more money to like you remember that movie Bright with Will Smith
no, I
that came on
remember.
Netflix?
I
Like
remember.
there's a reason why it was at Netflix because nobody was gonna spend that much money on them. Like Netflix came out, they're like, we're giving you the biggest budget. Like no one could compete with that. So Netflix can make these plays. You know, some of the other studios they're not willing to put out that much money, and I understand why. But Netflix can do it. Like the only people who can really compete with Netflix like that are like Apple or Amazon, and
Maybe the question, the
that's
answer is that
why.
they're
That's why.
willing to do it. They're also willing to do it. I know that maybe a studio has the resource to do
No,
it, and maybe they're just not willing.
but the reason why is because of the structure, like the actual financial structure of how they get their money back. Like they have a different model compared to Netflix. That's the main reason. Like these other studios, they still are for that type of budget. They have to do well when it comes. The box office has to. They have to make enough money from the box office grosses, but until they've built up their streaming service where they're making enough, they have enough customers that are subscribing and they're retaining those customers. Netflix is already ahead of the game, they're so far ahead. I mean, the only one who's coming close is like Disney, and that's another Disney's Disney. But that's really how they can make these deals, and they can they pretty much they can intimidate the other studios and be like, oh, you don't want to make it, you only gonna give that much, we're gonna give way more, like, so they can do that. So it's hard to compete, man. It's just hard to compete when you're competing with like a big giant. Like, I mean, these are tech. Think about it. These are tech companies. These aren't, you having tech money pouring into movies and projects. It's another playing field, man. It's not just you know a media conglomerate. I'm just saying. There's a reason why. But yeah, man, Spielberg. Why not? I would take advantage too. If I was
All
Spielberg.
right. All right. So, switching gears, we want to try to get through some of these guys because, as I said, it is jam packed with stuff. So, switching gears from the world of streaming, we're going into the world of podcasting. So, mega podcast deals have created new opportunities for talent. So, in a story that was dropped on Deadline, they discuss some of the new opportunities that exclusive deals that are being provided to a lot of podcasters. So, Jerome, you want to discuss some of these examples?
Yeah, I just thought this was really interesting, and this is another area that is definitely changing the way people consume entertainment, and then also another opportunity for creators. To me, it's just mind-boggling, but it just shows you don't need it. If you're a little kid trying to look at, instead of having a dream to be like, I want to be a movie star or a athlete or whatever, man, look at these podcasts, guys. They're making ridiculous money. Of course, it's not everybody, but man, this with deals like Joe Rogan getting that $100 million deal from Spotify, and they're not actually, and they're just licensing it too. They're not even buying it out. But I think it's for like a certain time period, and then Amazon with that huge deal with acquiring Wandery, I think.
Yeah.
It just shows that, they see these companies, especially like music streaming companies, and then also anyone in media that wants to just add that wants to add podcasting to their portfolio of media companies or media content that they're going to continue to create, so they can have especially with built-in audiences. They're going to give these ridiculously high lucrative deals to talent. And I just thought it was really interesting because you have talent agents now repping podcasters. Like, I mean, it's crazy.
I
I
know,
would have
that's
I would
crazy.
have
Yeah.
never thought of this in a million years. But it's funny. It's not like podcasts haven't been around for a while. They have. It's just now they're really finding the model that is making more financial sense, and there's a need for it. And the other thing is, like, because these agents, these talent companies are representing these podcasters, and they also represent a lot of A-list talent, like actors and filmmakers, whatever. So now they're showing to their writers, their producers, directors, actors, all their talent that they represent, another avenue to also make money, and to also build their intellectual property, so that if they want to do a TV show or movie later, they have that opportunity. So it's interesting, in this article they're also talking about David S. Goyer. He's making, the guy who wrote, Batman Begins, Blade. He directed the third Blade. I mean, he's written so many, like, DC. He was part of, I think, was it Man of Steel also. I mean, I don't know. The dude, he's like the go-to comic book adaptation guy
Yeah.
for screenplays. And yeah, he's doing, I think, like a Batman podcast or something. And then there's, what is it? You just have other actors that are going to get in the game and filmmaking, and it makes sense. I even have a friend who's like, he wrote a script, and he hasn't got it financed yet. But now I think another way he's going to try and pitch it again is by doing a podcast first, so he could build an audience. And hey, then you can repitch it. Then I think he's going to try and repitch it that way. Be like, hey, we got an audience with a podcast. But the thing is, like, you could build a podcast of a story, get a lot of fans, and like you could even, you get enough people listening or subscribing to the stuff you're putting out, like you can make money that way. And then transition. And it does make sense, though, if you really think about it, because someone like Joe Rogan having so many people who listen to his podcast, Spotify wants those types of people, so they don't mind shelling out the cash to acquire him. So then it's like, hey, you got all those people who are going to go to Spotify. Now they have to go to Spotify to listen to Joe Rogan, like whenever that starts.
Yeah.
So then if they have to go to
bringing,
Spotify,
you're catering to that demand.
But think about it. Now they're going to have to go to Spotify just to listen to the guy they want to listen to. And guess what? Oh, now they can maybe listen to music. They're going to hear ads. So it's like a no-brainer for them. Maybe not for every company. I mean, I know Amazon makes sense too, because they have Amazon Music, whatever. But I can see why. But it's crazy. Like, some of these deals. I mean, it's like, these are like sports
And I was
deals.
going to say, to speak further to what you're saying. I mean, it's fascinating. Just what you were saying about that landscape change of seeing a lot of these figures now getting representation, and the push being made to do that, where you have other folks as well that they give you example of some other shows. I know you were trying to you were brain farting on some of the shows that they were talking about, but they have one apparently, Smartless, which is a series with Jason Bateman, Will Arnett, and Sean Hayes. You have literally with Rob Lowe. I know Rob Lowe out there, he has a fan base that spans decades. So, to be able to have, that brand at your disposal is,
exactly.
quite valuable. So what comes to mind in seeing this story is it goes towards something that I know we were discussing prior, and we discussed it on other episodes as well. And that's just that idea of, it allows people an opportunity to really maximize their brand, where they are able to really hone in on that and really have that, what's the word that I'm looking for? Have that exclusivity of knowing that they are bringing their content to a platform, and they are exclusively providing it to that platform, where they are saying, okay, I want to have all of my content come to this platform. You guys need to come to this platform as well, because this is the only place where you'll be able to find it. And it really kind of in working with a lot of these platforms, see the value and receive the value in terms of the deals that they're able to make on their brand. So I mean, that's what immediately struck for me in thinking about the story and what it entailed. But did you have any further thoughts on it before we move on?
Yeah, I would just say also with the article and Deadline, they're talking about how, like, okay, I think for last year or this year, the projected revenue for podcasts, it was saying it was around 1 billion compared to like radio
radio
revenue, which is like 10 billion. But the thing is, it's the
but it's
reason
still
why these
growing.
people are that's why these companies are making these deals. I mean, because there's growth.
They're
There's tons
doing
of
it
growth.
now while they can. Yeah,
Exactly. Yeah, it's cheaper. And like, I mean,
be
I'll
that
be honest.
innovator.
Like, what I want to know though is, I'm not gonna lie. Like, I listen to podcasts and stuff. When I'm driving, maybe when I'm working out or whatever. I haven't really started listening to, like, scripted podcasts and stuff like that. And I'm sure, people will, and there are people out there who do. But it's like, I'm curious to see how far that can go, because I'm just like, I mean, I think it's cool. Like, if you're going, you want to hear something. If you can't watch something, like you can't watch a movie or you can't watch a TV show because you're driving or you're doing something where, you know, you can't see something while you're doing it. I'm like, yeah, that's cool, and it'd be interesting just to see how much that grows, which obviously they believe it will. But I don't know. For me personally, I rather, whenever I listen to podcasts or something, I usually want to listen to something like for educational purposes or whatever. Maybe I
Right.
want to hear people. So it's just, to me, it's just interesting to see. Like, I guess I would have to look at the statistics to see what are people more drawn to, or is it maybe just more niche? I guess because that's the thing about Joe Rogan. Joe Rogan's not really, the reason I listen to Joe Rogan once in a while, it's like he just has these long ass conversations with some celebrities, and you hear some really hilarious or amazing, like,
But
behind
it's
the scenes
really
stories.
a
And it's
lot of it's very thoughtful stuff that you otherwise wouldn't get from these guests. So
but
what he's
but
able
that's what
to
I'm saying.
mine
But
out of
that's
his
what I'm
guests. Yeah.
saying. Yeah, that's what I'm saying. But that's why I'm listening to it. I'm not necessarily, and the thing is, I can cut in and out. I don't necessarily have to be like, oh, let me listen to everything because it's a story. So that's what I'm wondering. Like, I'm just curious to know how far that goes with the whole scripted story, like, podcast, and how far that will continue to go. Because, when you're watching a movie, you're watching a movie, you're enthralled. You spend the time just watching it. Some of these podcasts,
Yeah.
I could just be like, oh yeah, let me listen to here. I could turn it off. Like, I'm working out. You know, it. I can go in and out of it. So that's interesting to see. But obviously, a lot of people, they're tuning in. So that's the future. That's another area that's growing. And obviously, like with apps like Clubhouse, that's that's been growing, and
Right.
you have
Right.
competitors now. So you got to get on there, man. Anyway, there's some good.
We
There's some funny.
we
There's some funny. I'm
but
on there, but we got to do a room on
nah,
that.
just kidding, just kidding.
We need to do a room on there. We need to do a room on. Anyway. So next story.
You digress, right? Off your soapbox. All right. So switching gears and I guess you can kind of say to a degree it's a follow-up story from what we talked about previously, and that's basically centering around the return of a lot of the industries that were, a lot of the entertainment industries that had suffered due to COVID, and how they are adjusting, how things will continue going forward. Before, I know we were talking about equity and what they're doing with actors in the theater realm. So this week, we had something similar happen with SAG and AFTRA. For those of you that are not familiar, it's a union associated with film and TV. So they recently this week adopted some guidelines for employers that want to, mandate having vaccines being provided, well, not provided, but to make sure that their crew are getting vaccinated and making it, mandatory. So in that story, let me pull it up real quick. Yes. Here we go. So yeah, in that story, it basically stipulates that according to those guidelines, the specifics include, productions must announce policies as soon as possible. So preferably initial breakdowns or earliest casting discussions, and must apply equally to all cast and crew working in a relevant zone or work production. Production must have procedures in place to engage in interactive processes with those requesting, ADA or religious accommodations, and must include procedure for initiating requests. And also includes policies being able to be enforced when vaccines have been readily available to performers for a sufficient period of time to confer immunity in the start time, the time for start of work, and it includes other things as well, such as being vaccinated as a condition of employment for any production are going to be absorbed by the employer, and it will be considered as work time. So that vaccination time will be considered as work time. So you see this, Jerome, and I know we were talking, briefly, about it before with on the other end in another medium, on the theater end, on stage, and how having this in place, makes a lot of sense in terms of ensuring that the industry is able to continue and that, people are being safe. What are your thoughts on this and AFTRA, not necessarily enforcing, according to these guidelines, but just saying, if a production is mandating this and saying that it's mandatory, that this is what the stipulations will be?
Yeah, I mean, it's inevitable. I mean, to me, I think that this is what's gonna happen. It's like this is what has to happen. It's gonna happen. I mean, whatever. This is my opinion, but you know, um, I know that there are probably some lawsuits already, and there's probably gonna be people challenging this, but it is what it is. I mean, what are you gonna do? If there's if there's a possibility that people can, they can decrease the amount of people who can catch the virus, or because it's, and with these variants, the Delta variant and whatever variant is gonna come to fruition or reach here. um, these production companies, and they're going to want to make sure that most people are vaccinated, even though, like I said, if they technically can't mandate it, and like I said, that's where you're probably going to have these challenges in court, um, and like the legal system's going to have to decide what they can do. But this is what's going to happen, and it also has to do with insurance. Like, there was like no insurance companies before the pandemic that had this in the. I don't think there was any that had this in the force majeure clause. Force majeure is like when there's like if there's a war or whatever. That's a clause saying like they're not responsible because it's there's some active war, something emergency situation happened, but it didn't cover a pandemic. So now there, I do remember during the pandemic at the beginning or the middle section, there were like at least two companies that were kind of battling it out, where they had an insurance policy for COVID-19, but it was expensive. It was at least like 10% of your budget. So say you had $1 million budget, you have to put $100,000, spend $100,000 premium
Yeah.
to get insurance. I think we kind of talked about
And
this
this is a
before.
breakdown also, by the way, guys,
Yeah.
of what I was discussing in the story from
So
Deadline. But go ahead.
so because of that, like if you're gonna have to spend so much money to insure your production, in case people are gonna get infected with the virus, it's to me, it's like a no-brainer that you're going to mitigate that risk by having as little as, decreasing the amount of people that are not vaccinated there and or who could spread the virus. So it's kind of like a loophole, it seems like. And it's like, even if they say they can't mandate people getting vaccinated, this is a way that I'm sure they're going to probably, these companies are probably going to hire people who are like, if you're vaccinated, there's probably a higher chance regardless. So this is kind of SAG after trying to like accommodate and make sure that, all right, if these guidelines are in place or whatever, the actors, they have to abide by them, but then they need to at least get paid for whatever days or outside of work effort they need to put into making sure that they're vaccinated or they're doing any tests or whatever, because this stuff costs money and it's adding to the productions of these. It's adding to the budget. I mean, like I said, they have to do
But
it.
I was
I mean,
going to
what are you
say,
gonna
on
do?
another regard, it's very smart too, because and you guys have seen it in prior interviews that I've had of actors, commenting on how it's been, working during this time. And if they're, if the actor's not working on a project, they're not. They're not making, money. I mean, yeah, you have residuals and you have royalties and you have all those other things that can come into play, but there are not many actors that are doing, national commercials that have that luxury, or, they're part of, they're a regular on a series where they are getting residual income because the series is in syndication. So like, for those actors that are really relying, paycheck to paycheck on each of these productions, it gives them, some it gives them some protection too, because if they're on a production and they have to be quarantined for a couple of weeks, that's also, time spent that they are not having an opportunity to go elsewhere to do another production as well. Or to work on something else that will require them to, not be able to be a part of it because they are quarantining for the current project that they're in. Because that's been something that has come up with a lot of actors where they're like, you're saying, and I mean, I get it, I understand, but it's I feel like it was unseen circumstance that has come as a result of, the landscape that we're in, is just that idea that, okay, that means that I can't do this job because I'm here for a couple of weeks while I'm on a current job being in quarantine. So it helps in other regards too, and allowing them to still bring in revenue for themselves in those circumstances, while of course also being, safe for themselves and for, the other folks that they're working with on a given production. So yeah. Anything you want to add before we move on?
And I feel like this is like I said, you're seeing this is the tip of the iceberg, and it's going to continue with. It's not just entertainment. I mean, like I said, we were talking before, like even like Delta Airlines, they made it clear they're like, anyone who applies to work at Delta Airlines has to be vaccinated. Now, the people who already were our employees, they can't force them or whatever, or mandate it. But I'm sure there's probably going to be some loophole where they're like, okay, well, if you're not vaccinated, you probably have to. Maybe you won't be able to go on certain flights. You're gonna have to test. I mean, that's the way around it. Even with CinemaCon, I know we're gonna try and cover CinemaCon. It says if you look on the schedule, it says you have to show your card that you're vaccinated or that you've been tested. I think, or I'm actually, yeah. So it's like they're mandating it in almost anything where you're gonna see a lot of people. There's a lot of people congregating or interacting, or if it's a concert, if it's a conference, comic, any convention, a movie set, you know, it makes there's so much risk there. Why is a company or organization not going to mitigate the risk? It's like they're just trying to, like I said, CYA, cover their ass. I mean, basically that's what it is. And I don't blame them. I mean, I have yet to see. I'm not saying there probably have been, but I've yet to see, or if I wonder if we are going to see, like, if someone's literally going to try and could someone literally actually sue a company for saying, "Oh, I got COVID"? Like, it's a slippery slope, and that's another thing. They're putting a lot of these clauses into contracts to make sure that they're not liable, or that for whatever reason, like just trying to make it very transparent. And then also, like I said, when it has to, regarding the insurance, like I said, if they don't have the insurance to cover something like this, they want to make sure that they're not liable. So it's gonna be, man, a lot of lawyers are gonna get a bunch of work out of it. Lawyers and like these insurance companies, and I guess whoever's doing the testing, they're gonna, there's gonna be a lot of business there. But I'm sure there's gonna be some pushback to this, and we'll see how it plays out. But companies, organizations, and talent, they need to protect themselves, and I, I don't see, them not protecting themselves going forward until the CDC and everybody, the government, who are, whatever medical organization that has the authority to really say that this pandemic is not as contagious or deadly as it has been. So it's going
Sure.
to be, this is the post-pandemic world we're going to be living in for at least the near future. So
Indeed. And to, jump off of that as a segue, there is a story regarding a film that is on the way. I know we were talking about, stipulations of film and TV and what it will be like for sets. So I figured a good segue would be hopping into a story about a film that is on the way. That being a film that is going to be executive produced by Morris Chestnut. It's going to be a film about the Tulsa race massacre. So this is an exclusive story from Deadline. It's going to be a film titled as Greenwood Avenue. The film will chart the story of a Philadelphia lawyer who follows a mysterious lead to Tulsa, Oklahoma, to discover the events of Black Wall Street massacre of 1921 and her family's connection to it. So let me pull that up real quick. All right. So you hear this story, Jerome, of Morris Chestnut executive producing and being a part of this project. And what are your thoughts on it? I mean, I know in the past year we've had a chance. Well, I guess more than the past year, but in a couple of productions, we've had that event shown as a plot point to shine some light on it. I mean, we saw it in Watchmen, in the HBO series Watchmen, as well as in another HBO series in Lovecraft Country. So But in thinking of this week, us having a Juneteenth recently come by, over this week, and thinking of a lot of these stories, from our history that need to be told and need to be highlighted to know more about our history and not shy away from it. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting because I mean, like I knew about this story briefly, like, but I didn't really know all the details and everything. And then from, like I said, from watching Watchmen, that was an amazing, I mean, take on showing at least part of it, how it
Yeah,
affected, the descendants of the people who were involved in that, and like I said, that's a comic book, type of show that's like based in realism, and that's what made it interesting how they did that, and that portrayal of Watchmen to connect it to a lot of of the history in
real
this
life events. Yeah,
history in this country that was disturbing,
the
and it
uglier
remains
parts.
to be.
Yeah,
Yeah, and that still resonates today. So that was a good touch, how they a good spin on it. And like I haven't seen the rest of Lovecraft Country, but I'm sure they did a good job too in that. I'll have to check the rest. I've only seen a few episodes, but it's a good show though. But this would be interesting watching an actual movie just focus on that to really showcase like some more of the details and how it led up to what happened, and then you know the outcome. And the thing is, this is just one story too. I mean, this is probably one of the more famous ones, but there's been a lot of I'm know that there's been other stories that people probably don't know about as much, that the same sort of stuff happened, and these stories need to be told. I mean, and it's the same with also people just rebelling back in the day against slavery or whatever, and then getting burnt or whatever, set as an example. Like there's a whole if you go to the African American, you've probably been there already. The one that we're
yeah,
in DC,
yeah.
African American Museum of History. Like I remember I had to go
And
there
I highly
one.
recommend
I had to go
those
there
to
two
check
years.
it out, guys.
I had to go. I thought one day would have been enough, but hell no, it's not. You got to go at least 2 days to really take everything. Like after
Yeah,
going to all the nice, the entertainment stuff, the music stuff, which is really great too. Just going through the part where you're starting from slavery and all the way up to, I
yeah,
think
the
it ended
uglier.
on like, oh,
Yeah,
I think it ended at Obama's inauguration, which is like, I mean that's great, but it's like we still got other stuff, but whatever. That's a good start. There were so many little stories there. I was reading. I was just like, man. I was like, I knew about some of these, but I was like, wow, I didn't know about this one. It's like there's a whole bunch of movies you can make with a whole bunch of these different stories that just not as many people know about, and they should be told because I don't remember learning all this stuff when I was in high school or middle school or even elementary school. It's like you get a whitewashed version that just doesn't show it. Just shows it from like the winner's perspective.
well,
Basically,
you
that's like
glazed over
it's
you
true.
glazed over a lot of details, and
Or they don't tell any of it at all. Like there's some stuff like I didn't even really know much about Juneteenth. I don't even remember them teaching us that in elementary or middle school or high school. I don't remember any of that. To me, I'm like I was like, oh, good. They always talked about what is it? Um, just the Civil War, and then the Emancipation Proclamation. Like like that the actual day of Juneteenth. Like that should have been a holiday a long time ago. But I just remember
but
I don't really even remember learning about that when I was younger. I'll just be honest. So a lot
no,
of this stuff is
for
terrible that
sure.
it's just it's not even being taught in schools. So this is good that now, like, as filmmakers and filmmakers, journalists, and novelists, historians, collaborating and making, if as long as they're, like I said, accurate and well, I'm sure this one's going to be a good, thorough, historically accurate, at least most for the most part, because obviously there are some artistic licenses you might have to take as a filmmaker, and that's fine. But if you get the essence of of these stories down, they need to be told, and then you learn. People can be inspired, learn, and just learn more information about history that they may have not have known. Like I'll give you another example, like Hidden Figures. I didn't know about Hidden Figures story until I was like, oh, that's great. So, I mean, that's what I love about some of these movies, because it's like it's educational too. You're like, oh wow, I didn't know about that story. I want to learn more now. So, you know,
For sure, for sure. And as I said, the fact that we're seeing more stories like this where it highlights events that a lot of people for whatever reason weren't familiar with, it is great to still have a light shine upon them. And you come back to that whole idea, if you don't know your history, you're doomed to repeat it. And I mean, as we were just talking about, we see elements of that to a degree, in terms of some aspects that still need to be improved upon. So with that being said, it actually segues into our next story, which deals with an iconic horror figure known as Candyman. So over this week, we had a trailer that was released for the upcoming horror film, which is set to release on August 27th in theaters. So not that far from now. I guess what, about a month and well, I guess a little, just about two months. We'll be getting this film. For those of you that probably recall the original franchise, starring Tony Todd, the iconic Tony Todd.
Tony Todd,
Yeah, Tony Todd.
The Rock.
So the original film, yes, the original film has those elements, describing the ugliness of our history. However, this new film seems to be taking a more modernized, I guess we could say, a more modernized look at the character's origin. So in the original film, in talking about the character, you have an artist who, and this by the way is a film that's going to be written and directed, or is written and directed, by Nia DaCosta, who, by the way, in talking about our love of superhero films, she will actually be helming the new upcoming Captain Marvel film, The Marvels. But I digress. In the original film, the character of Candyman was the son of a slave, and just going down the history, because I put it down. So his name was Daniel, who was an artist in the late 1800s, and he painted portraits for wealthy white landowners, and he ended up having an affair with the daughter of the landowner. Ended up fathering a child, and as a result of that, once the landowner grew wind of this, was killed by a lynch mob. His hand was severed. He was covered in honey, and as a result, you have all these bees that sting him to death, and he ends up becoming this ghastly figure who comes back and wreaks havoc. When his name is said. And I'm trying to remember, what is it, 3 times?
It's 5.
I want to say
5 times. I think it's 5
five
times.
times. 5 times. Yes, thinking of a different franchise, but
Candyman,
yes, 5
Candyman,
times.
Candyman, Candyman. Yeah,
No,
I think it
no,
is
no,
5
no, no,
times.
no, 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 no,
Isn't it 5 times?
Uh, I
I thought it
believe
was
it's
5
five.
times.
I believe it's 5 times. But anyway, I digress. So in the
I remember it's
new
5
trailer,
times. You're thinking about Bloody Mary, right? When people say Bloody, well, that's
I'm
something separate.
thinking, like I say, I'm thinking of a different legend. But anyway, I digress. In the new upcoming
You're thinking of
film,
Beetlejuice. That's what you're thinking of.
I digress.
Beetlejuice is
Thinking
3
of
times.
the upcoming modernized take. It looks like they're putting it on, spinning it on its head, and taking inspiration from what we've seen recently with the BLM movement. So the Black Lives Matters movement, in terms of what we've been seeing with police brutality, and actually shining a light on that as being tied to the character's origin. So, Jerome, what are your thoughts on them, making this heel change of not traveling as far back with this character's origins, and actually having it cementing it in something that's more modern for this character?
Yeah, I mean, I'm gonna be honest with you. We were talking about this off the record or beforehand. I wasn't like the biggest fan of like seeing like I said, I'm just not the biggest fan of remakes, even though I get pleasantly surprised sometimes. Like actually, you recommended going to see Child's Play, the remake. I was like, oh, that was actually pretty good how they did it. But and even with this one, I was like, oh man, why they got to remake Candyman? Because like to me, Candyman is definitely one of my favorite horror films ever. Just the kind of everything. But after the trailer, I was like, okay. I mean, I think it's fine how they've changed it a little bit. And I know how you were saying that one of the actors or whatever it could be connected maybe to the
Yeah,
original one, or the
so
character
so
maybe. So I don't know. Maybe if that is part of it, who knows? That could be, and then it's not just a reboot, maybe. So I don't know.
so yeah, and
Uh,
speaking, and I was gonna say, and speaking to that's what I find. I commend that they are going this route and making it more modern and relevant and poignant to what's happening in our society today. However, I guess in knowing who they've cast in the film, so
or maybe it could be.
the actress, and I'll bring her up, the actress who is playing the mother of our lead character. I know you're speaking of Watchmen, just before, but and I apologize, man, I'm butchering if I butcher your name, but Yahya Abdul Mateen II, who many remember as Dr. Manhattan from
Yeah,
Watchmen.
yeah, he's good. He
He's
was in
actually
Black
going to
Mirror.
he's going to be the lead in this film. And his mom, he's going to be playing Anthony McCoy, and his mom is going to be played by Vanessa Williams, who anyone who's an eagle-eyed fan of the original franchise, she was that mother who had the infant in the original Candyman. So she's playing Anne-Marie McCoy, which is actually the same character from the original Candyman. So that begs the question of, okay, are they trying to say that he is that infant from the original Candyman? And if so, why do this updated take on Candyman unless you're trying to have ties to the original film, yet also bring your own fresh take. So like, does that mean that? And again, I have no proof of this, but I'm just theorizing based on them having a character from the original film. Are they saying that these horrible events that happen in regards to racism or bigotry, any of these like horrible events, create a stain on a area where it takes place, or a stain on the soul that suffered that tragedy, and it creates Candyman. So like you have the first iteration of Candyman with Tony Todd, and now we have this other additional one from this recent, or this more recent event that has birthed a new Candyman. So I mean, maybe they might go that way, but if they're not going that way, and if they are indeed keeping this modern take, again, I think that is great, and I think that is poignant to change it. My only thing is that I feel that it makes the story smaller versus allowing it to have that epicness of it happening such a long time ago, because I feel that there's an opportunity to show how that character, or that supernatural figure, has wreaked havoc ever since that time up until now, versus it being only happening within it. I don't know how they'll state it, if again they are just sticking to this new modernized version. If it happened 10 years ago, if it happened 5 years ago, I feel that, I hope, and it's going to probably again come down to how it's executed. So I look forward to seeing it, but I don't want it to to minimize or make the story feel smaller. I want it to still feel epic. I don't know if I'm making any sense by, having it happen closer versus it happening in the past where, you feel like there is this long history with this character versus something that's still relatively new. But what are your thoughts, Jerome?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know when this is actually. What is it actually based? I mean, what year is it supposed to be taking place? Like just recently, a couple years ago,
So
or
far as I know,
I
and
don't know.
I'll look at it again, I believe it's going to be taking place, in modern day. So right now, um,
But still, though, like, what is? I mean, like this year. I mean, that's what I'm saying. Like right now,
I
modern
see.
day
Yeah,
could
yeah.
still be like
I
20
see.
years ago, still
True.
considered. I mean, you know what I'm saying? Like, I don't know. Like, I don't. Who knows? I mean, maybe they do connect it somehow. Who, I'll just be honest. Like, but this is the only issue that this is what happens though when you try to remake stuff. So it's like you either you're comparing to the original, but then also you can put your spin on it. You can do stuff.
Right.
You can
You're
try and connect, and
trying to
that's
have
why.
your. I feel
Hey,
like you're
look,
trying to
this,
have your cake and eat
but
it
this is
too.
but
So,
this is why I have an issue with just remakes in general. Unless it's like the only time remakes to me make sense that I'm not as against is when it's something that it was made such a long time ago that they weren't able to they weren't able to have the technology or CGI to make it look realistic back then. Like I would say like maybe like a Superman, or even before, go earlier before that. And then if it's maybe like if it's a foreign film that works really well, and then the language, that you could change because of language barrier. I mean, like you look at The Departed, like that was a remake of Infernal Affairs, which
The
it
Thing was
really
a remake.
from
One of my favorite films of all time from the
yeah.
'80s. The Thing is a remake.
And then
John
even
Carpenter's The
like
Thing.
the what is it, the Magnificent Seven. I mean, they did it as a
Yeah,
remake of a
yeah.
remake. I mean, so it's like maybe culturally stuff like that. I'm not, and even so, it's like okay, that's your take. You do what you want to do. Um, but I just feel like that's really the problematic issue. I'm not saying this movie isn't going to be good or interesting. It could be, like I said, Child's Play, that kind of like surprised me a little bit because of the AI component, which is interesting. But to me, it's just like, is it really? If you're not really adding a lot to the story or the perspective, or you're not to the original mythology behind the original, or just the characters, it's just harder for me to really care as much to be like, oh, is this just to be like, hey, was this really needed? Do we really need to watch this? Do I really care as much? Am I as intrigued or engaged? Like, I'll still watch it, but yeah, that's just my only issue with that. It's like, I'll give a perfect example, like RoboCop. Like that was interesting how they rebooted, they made it updated, but it just to me it can never compare to the original because like it, it's just
But
not the same.
see,
But
that
it
that's
made
the only
sense. But
kind
it
of.
made sense. But it made sense though how they updated. Like I liked how they showed the whole drones and how it works with the military right now. Like that was cool. But it's just like you know. I,
But
I,
I would
I guess for me it's
argue.
like
I was going
RoboCop.
to say.
For me I would say for me actually I would say the exception would be like if maybe they made like the remake of RoboCop, instead of remaking RoboCop, just make it a different story. Then I wouldn't be as critical. But I'm like comparing it to the original. I'm just like you know to
But
me it's
again,
just it
I
can't
think I
compare.
would
It
say.
can't compare.
So I would say that, and the reason I would argue, and you might agree with me, and you may not, but the reason why I feel you probably enjoy it a great deal, it goes to what. When I think I'm trying to remember when we've had this discussion and talking about. I think we were talking about it with Bad Boys, and talking about how some films or some
Oh, the time
franchises,
period,
the time period, they're
yeah, yeah,
they're like really tied to that time. RoboCop is such an '80s decade film.
yeah.
And,
It's
and, and I
exactly.
love I love action films from the '80s. Like I love them. They're like ultra violent. They're awesome. And I mean I could watch them now because they're there's some things just don't play as much obviously, and some things like in terms of how our world is, some things jokes wouldn't really fly honestly, but in terms of the action, though, like it's so over the top. Like those '80s films, those action so over the top. So I feel like that's the reason why it holds such a it holds so deeply for you because it's such a film from that decade. And if you love films from that decade, you're going to love that film. I feel.
Yeah,
Um,
but it's also because, but the thing is, like I said, it's also because that was the original film. You know what I'm saying? Like that's what we know it for. So it's like if you're trying to make a PG-13 version later,
There's
It's
that
like
too. Yeah.
it doesn't to me. It's like why are you like? I would have rather seen like an if you were going and even though you don't even need to, but like I would have rather seen something else with RoboCop doing further on in his life. You know, like just something different adding to the story. To me, I just don't like this idea of always let's remake something just because we want people to watch it. It's IP. Like, give me a different type of story. Like, I'd rather at least like have a different entry. You know, that might be more modern. Like, I know not everybody was the biggest fan of. I thought it was pretty good, but it wasn't better than the original. Like, the fourth Die Hard to me it's not the
I like
best one,
I
but
like
I
the
but
full
I
I like
like
the
but
full
the thing
dollar.
is but to me I thought that was a good example of you take John McClane, he's older, and it's like but you're applying the next threat. That threat was it's a cyber
Technology.
threat or
Yeah.
whatever. Like but it's still him, but he's in okay, now they made a PG-13. There is an unrated version, but I'd rather see that type of sequel or an installment than like, hey, let's just remake Die Hard. I mean, I was hearing talks about let's remake Lethal Weapon or even Rush Hour. I know they made the TV versions. I still haven't even watched. I kind of refuse to watch the TV show. Maybe eventually I get to it. But it's like I would laugh if they try to remake Rush Hour because like Rush Hour is already like a clone of Lethal Weapon, and it's like the actors make that. So I mean, that's another story. We're talking about actors making a franchise, of course, but um, yeah, it's really, it, to me, it's like I have a high bar for remakes. Like, really, it's like you really got to give me something I haven't seen, or give me a reason. Give me a reason to watch this remake because the original could have never done it. I always give the best example of Superman. Like, I'm not saying I like the first two Superman, but nobody can convince me that that's how Superman is supposed to look like when he's flying. Like they did a good job back then, but you can't compare to the CGI now. Like that's why I like Man of Steel better because it's more believable. Like that type of story, you have to have the technology to support the character, and what the character's abilities are. Like it's just not gonna be believable. I mean, that's how I look at it. Like you need to have like if that's the case, then all right, let's do a remake or let's do something that was shown back in the day that it looked so cheesy or whatever because the technology wasn't there. I mean, but you know, besides that, I don't it's not really necessary for me. But I'm gonna give this movie a chance. I like Jordan Peele. He produced it and he has original ideas, so that's why I kind of want to see more of what he can do. So
And I mean, I want to
anyway,
check it out, just by virtue of the writer and director. I mean, I mentioned it, before of she will actually be taking on a Marvel film. So I'm interested. Excuse
yeah.
me. I'm interested to see, what they saw in this film. It must have been something really awesome in seeing this film, or what she was doing with this film, that it
But she did
gave
movies.
her that opportunity.
I
And
think she directed some
she
films
has,
before that. They probably looked at other stuff
she
too.
has.
But
But I'm just saying, in terms of that momentum of other films that she's had in her repertoire, and this iteration of Candyman, what was seen, in things that she's done prior, and
it's
even
also
in this
cheaper.
film, that convinced them, it's like, yeah, this is who we need for the Captain Marvel sequel. Like I said, my only thing is, I love that they are trying to do something different. I just hope in terms of how it's executed, at least on paper, it feels like by going that way, it makes the story feel smaller and not as epic, because it's not happening. It doesn't give that space of this character being around as long as he was in the prior franchise. Um, and if you are deciding to go that route, really dig in and go that route, and not have it be confusing by having a character that was from the original franchise that still provides threads of the original franchise. Like, if you're going to go a different route completely, and completely disregard characters that you've had in prior franchise. So I'm looking forward to checking out the film and seeing how it's executed and how it's done, for all of those reasons. And then, of course, on top of that, I'm a horror guy, so like I'm going to see it as well, for that reason also. So with that being said, switching gears, also talking about film and our movie going experience, talking about being a horror fan. So AMC is offering all you can eat popcorn for Cinema Month. And you're like, all you can eat popcorn? Yep, that's right. So a couple of months ago, there was a story that they discussed talking about All Cinema Week, and you're probably asking, what does that entail? So it was an it was a week that was put together in the same way that we have like weeks such as like Restaurant Week, or I know a lot of you out there that enjoy your binge watching. We have Shark Week that people enjoy, but Cinema Week, in lieu of what's happened over the last year and a half. Cinema Week was launched across the U.S. It was developed and executed by Film Frog Marketing LLC and Cinema Week LLC as a means of celebrating the culture of movie going and supporting hard hit industry. So Cinema Week will showcase exclusive in-theater content and activations, as well as giveaways, special guests, in the hopes, of course, of re-energizing that industry. So many theaters are going to be doing special things over the course of that time. It's supposed to run from June 22nd to June 27th. However, this deal that they have going will actually extend onto the 30th. So, you see this deal, Jerome, and the efforts that are being made to kind of revitalize and help the movie theater or the movie industry, along in lieu of what we've experienced over the last year and a half. What are your thoughts?
My first thought is I went to see F9 last night at AMC Tyson's, and I'm like, they didn't tell me this. So I was like, yo, and I thought it was free pop. I thought it was free popcorn. So I was like, yo, the guy didn't tell me any of this, but whatever. It's all good. I get AMC is done right for a while, and I have the subscription, so they, I've been saving.
So
They've been
I will
saving
make it
money.
clear,
They've been
guys.
saving
So,
me
yeah,
money.
it's unlimited popcorn.
Yeah, they've been
refill.
saving me money anyway. I think they should have got. I think they should probably just give out some free popcorn at first, because that'd be another way to bring people in. Or, but this is great. I mean, hey, they need this. They need to have some sort of big time promotion or reason to like get more people into theaters. And of course, people are going to are flooding the theaters more. Like I said, I saw F9 last night. Okay, it was in Virginia. Maybe their capacity limits are different, because it was pretty packed. It's funny. There was a dude who actually was in my seat, and I had to be like, no. um, but it was, yeah, I think it's great. I mean, maybe they'll have, I don't know, free refills. Maybe they'll give out some candy. I don't know. I think if they had, like, say they gave out like popcorn and a soda or something, maybe one of the days, and maybe if they had like really cheap, I know AMC is doing like 30% off on Tuesdays before. I think if you see a movie before like 5 o'clock or something like that, they have a discount on Tuesdays. It's like 30% off. And I'm sure some of the other theaters, they might have something similar, or they might be promoting something. But I think more promotions they have, or some sort of incentive just to get people back to the theaters and have this need to want to see a movie in the theater, is definitely helpful. And I'm all for it, because we've been through such a long year of just watching stuff at home, which is, you can watch stuff at home, and I like watching stuff at home. Shoot. But there's certain movies I want to see in the theaters, and it makes a difference. You're watching, like I was watching F9 on IMAX last night, and it's like, I could see the difference there's certain parts of the movie. I'm not going to spoil anything, but where it's like you could when you see it on the big screen, you see some stuff that I could tell was shot in film or was grainier, and then some stuff is obviously more clean. And it's like you can see those differences, and you see the action, you see the amazing, ridiculous set pieces. Even though the audio I thought could have been a little bit better. I don't know. That was weird, but it still was a good experience. But that experience I'm not getting at home watching something on HBO Max or Disney or whatever. It's just not the same experience, and you don't notice those nuances, unless you're in a movie theater. So it's glad to go back to theaters, glad to watch movies in in a communal experience, and to be able to discuss them later. And once in a while, eat some popcorn, eat some of that unhealthy
And I
junk
was going to
food.
say, man, it looked like you might. I don't know if you see this highlighted. You might have gotten gypped, man. It says, mega a mega cinema chain, AMC Theaters, on Monday announced that it would celebrate the first ever cinema week by offering free and unlimited popcorn refills to all customers.
But
By
that's
any
free and
yeah.
unlimited, but it said free too. Well,
So
I don't know.
So yeah, maybe
I
they
think it's
just need to
I
word this
think it's
differently.
I
They're
think it's
wording this
refillable.
weirdly, but yeah. So
They would
refills,
have
guys.
said something to me
But
because I'm an
they're
AMC.
wording
I'm an
this
A
weirdly.
list. Yo, I'm an A list gold star. I'm like the top of the
But they
top.
didn't say anything about Cinema Week with you. That's weird.
No one
Maybe
said
they
anything
yeah.
about that to me.
Wow.
Maybe, yeah, at least when I
Wow.
went there. So, hey,
Wow.
I don't know what happened, but this might. I think maybe this is. I don't know. Maybe they're
Yeah, they
promoting it in
worded
regards
it
to Duncan
really
more.
weirdly here. But yeah, because I would read it the same way, is that, after you purchased it, that you get unlimited
Maybe they
refills, so
sent me
all you
some
can eat
message or
popcorn.
something. They might have sent. Maybe they sent a message in my app or something. But regardless of that, they should have. If that was the case, they should have said something there. But whatever. I mean, I'm already getting it.
Womp
I'm
womp.
already saving my. I see enough. As long as I watch like what. I watch like 2 to 3 movies a month. I'm getting my money back, and I go in the nighttime. So there you go. For the AMC A list, I'm like doing a commercial for that. Hey, AMC, you gotta hook it up.
Hey, hey, hey,
I'll
free
promote you
publicity.
guys if you do it right. Even though iPick is still my place, but they don't have the same deal as they need to get a iPick needs to get a subscription service too. Why not?
So, with that being said, talking about all you can eat popcorn, switching gears to the small screen. So this week, the creator of the NBC series known as The Blacklist, so John Bokenkamp, he actually revealed this week that he will be departing from the show after 8 seasons. So let me pull this up real quick. He put it on his Twitter and sent a letter to for all fans to read about, of course, him being grateful of having the show, be around, and it's actually still going to continue. So I want to make that clear too. It's still going to continue, but he is in fact leaving the show. So let me pull this up here and just have a snippet of it for you guys. All right, and I'm just going to read a portion of it because it's pretty extensive. But basically, what he says here. Hold on one sec. Pull it up here. Here we go. So, dear blacklisters, I wanted to write you directly to let you know that I've made the difficult decision to leave the blacklist. I love this show with all my heart, and it's been an incredible journey. But after 8 years, I feel it's time for me to step out of my comfort zone, try something new, and explore a few of the other characters and stories that have been crawling around in my head. And of course, you guys can check out the rest of what he said there regarding his experience doing the show. As I said, the show is going to continue for season 9, and the reason why I wanted to bring it up is because I was fortunate enough. I guess what was it? Wow, it's been 2 years. So, and ironically, it was the last con. I feel that I went to before all of the social distancing and COVID era started. I was fortunate enough to, sit down with him. So, and, he's a, awesome person, super down to earth. And he was really, into what the show is about and its potential, going forward with many of its characters. So, you hear this, Jerome, you have a creator that has put together this show and it's, lasted, as I said, in the time that he's leaving, has lasted 8 seasons thus far, and it's still going to continue. What are your thoughts on his comments and the future perhaps of the blacklist?
Yeah, it's funny. I mean, like I know we were talking about this a little bit, and like I think I've probably seen like the first episode of Blacklist. Like it looks like a good show. I just never really got into it, like, or continue watching more. And maybe I will. It'll be on my list one of these days. So many shows to watch. So what are you supposed to do?
Right.
But just in general, as the idea of a showrunner or someone who created a movie, a TV show, or any project, any narrative scripted project, wanting to branch off and do other stuff. I mean, like I said, I don't know all the details, and for whatever reason, I mean, he's saying what he's saying, of course, but to me, it sounds like, at least the part, if he has other projects that he's been developing and he wants to really, write, produce, or maybe, some screenplays he's written that he wants to produce or direct, or just spend more time doing that. I mean, I get it. I completely get it. I mean, if you're heavily involved in a hit TV show, like that takes up a lot of your time. I mean, um, compared to, like, say you're an actor and you're on a TV show, which is like one of the best gigs to have because you have a steady job, steady paycheck. They're just, if you're just an actor and just acting in the episodes, like you act in your episodes and they have a hiatus, you can act in other movies or do other stuff in between. But if you're like the showrunner or you're the creator and you're like really heavily involved or whatever, I mean, that's a lot of work. So it's tough to try to focus on maybe other projects. I'm not saying other people can't, but let's be real. Like, even if people say they're involved in a lot of projects, like there's only so much you're really that involvement is very. It's kind of deceiving when you see some of these headlines, like, oh, all these people are doing blah 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 blah. It's like that you don't know how involved they really are in all those projects. But if he's more motivated to work on like some passion projects or some other stuff he's written or just something totally different, and maybe there's some deal that hasn't been mentioned that he's making, that he's negotiating. I don't blame him. I mean, um, you know, that is one thing about a TV show. Like, you also have to remember, you're, especially if it's 8 seasons. Is that what it is? Yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
Think about that. Like, I mean, TV shows are great. I mean, hey, I would love to produce something I created for 8 seasons, but you got to remember, you're stuck in that world of those characters for 8 seasons. Like, you're not really going, like, the great thing about TV is that you have this format where you can delve deep into characters and you can have different episodes following different storylines and really go in depth about with these characters. And that's cool, but you're still stuck in that story, that world, and you can put your twist and change it a little bit, but there's a difference between that and, like, say you make a movie and then you make a totally different movie. Like, you may not be able to develop the characters as much like a TV show does or miniseries, but you can dabble in a totally different world or totally different. You can you get more creative freedom, um, with your characters, your storylines, or whatever you're doing. If you're making like a feature film, or if you're just doing a completely different maybe show or miniseries, maybe. So who knows? It could be that. I mean, and you never know. It could also be. I mean, like, I'm just speculating. With certain networks or certain companies, depending on what type of freedom or that they're giving him, or that could also be a factor. You never know. Like, as I was talking about Kenya Barris recently, who, like, man, he's killed it with network television with Blackish, and then he had Grownish and Mixedish. I think they're doing two spinoffs, Oldish and Latinish or
yeah. There are a
whatever.
lot
Yeah.
out there. There are a whole
Yeah.
bunch.
But the thing is, he
There are
had
a
to
whole
deal
bunch.
with Netflix, and he did that Black AF, Black as I like
Yeah,
that
yeah,
show,
yeah.
but and I think he's doing another season of that where it's gonna be like they're kind of doing spin-offs, or kind of like in different areas. Like, it's almost, they're making like they're making them kind of like films or something. They're changing the format, and it's gonna be in different parts of the world, I think. Um, but or something like that. I was reading it, but the thing is, he was saying recently, like, I guess Netflix kind of wanted, even though they were giving him freedom with his and not really being involved as much. I guess there might have been some miscommunication of what they actually wanted from him, and they weren't necessarily getting it or whatever, and there was some disagreement. So then he got out of his deal, and that's kind of weird. But sometimes that happens. If people maybe
Yeah.
different entities, they might have thought they had an agreement about what type of projects they were going to make, and then it wasn't exactly what the execution or whatever they got wasn't exactly what they really wanted. Which is funny because Netflix also, they have a lot of unique and not as mainstream stuff on there, or not as uh the not as, I guess, more popular or typical, like, network television type of content on there, because they do take a lot of chances on Netflix, I find, but it depends on, is that what they wanted from Kenya Barris? So maybe if he was like, he wanted to do something totally different, and it wasn't exactly what he thought was going to happen, then that's why some people, they try to get out of their contract or whatever. But it's just, stuff like this happens. Now, I don't know if this is right. I don't, like I said, I'm speculating with him too completely, even though there was reported, but I don't know exactly the situation with this
The
showrunner,
reasons,
but
yeah.
I could imagine it could be.
And I mean,
You never know. There's tons of reasons why. People say creative differences. They say what it could be. I'm tired of. I want to work on other stuff. There could have just been some stuff we don't even know about
and I
that
mean,
made people
it may
did
very
get
well,
along.
be that. Yeah, no, I mean, it may very well be that. But and this is the prior conversation that I had an opportunity to have. This is from C2E2, by the way. But if you're observing, just the body language there, like he was into his show and into because here he's just talking about how he came up with the idea for the show and his excitement about what would be happening with with other characters and the potential for what could happen going forward with a lot of those characters. I mean, the comment or the letter that he made, it may very well be something just as innocent as just saying that he just wants to do something different. So like I guess the thing that there are a couple of things that come to mind with me in thinking about this story. One, it's initially what you were saying about just doing something new, which again he stipulates here. But also just that idea that okay, I've done you've done everything that you can with this show. I mean, you
Yeah.
have what 8 seasons, so there's and I gotta look to see. You guys can let me know out there in the comments about it having syndication possibilities and being elsewhere. I don't think I've seen it, and you guys can correct me if I'm wrong out there. I don't believe I've seen it in syndication. I want to may perhaps it actually no, it is. I want to say it is on streaming as something that you can check out and catch up on. So there's that. So like in having crossing all of these checking off all of these boxes, so to speak, of having a show that has had significant amount of longevity and is continuing to have longevity, to have something that you are continuing to build revenue from. So like you're continuing to get revenue from it long after you have done the show. That's a nice luxury to have. So you have all of these things that you've already accomplished thus far. So like now what is there to do? So it's while it's a bummer to see that he is leaving the show, it's understandable also that he wants to take on a new challenge and perhaps he doesn't really have maybe there aren't any other things that he can that he feels that he can bring as a fresh take for where characters could go. So perhaps by passing the reins to a successor with that show and someone that he was working closely with to, let them know like, hey, this is my plan. I may potentially not be, because I'm assuming, he probably whoever he is that he was working closely with to take his place or to take that role that he has with the show. That he's already shared maybe a blueprint or maybe an idea of where he was thinking of where characters could go, but he's still going to leave it up to them to kind of take the reins and take it in a new, fresh direction. So it'll be interesting to see what becomes of the show now that he is leaving it and that now that he is moving on to other things, because there's still something to be said about how a creator has their blueprint, or not their blueprint, but their footprint on a show and their aesthetic. And you can tell when the show switches showrunners and how that aesthetic changes and if that new aesthetic works, because sometimes like you only enjoy the aesthetic of one showrunner over another. So that will definitely be interesting going forward. Do you have any final thoughts before we move on to our next story?
Yeah, I mean that I would say I would somewhat agree with that. I mean, um, I guess the aesthetic you're talking about would probably be like usually it's the storyline because like the style and everything usually just is the same for
Well,
throughout
I
because they don't
guess
want to mess with that.
also like
But really, it's the storyline. I
sometimes
think it's
with
really the
the
storyline or like the direction it goes. But also to me,
yeah.
that's also opinion. A lot of times, people say, we that's another conversation with like other shows because I disagree sometimes with some people like, oh man, it didn't stay true to blah blah blah, and it's like, yeah, I get it. Some of your hardcore fans or whatever. I'm not saying specifically for Blacklist because like I said, I haven't watched the show throughout, but yeah, I think it's more like this. I just think it's more storylines probably who gets focused on more, what they what they focus on more, because usually the style is set, at least like visually, and how the format is. But like like you said, I mean, I like I think there's most likely for this guy's situation, his situation is probably he just wants to work on other projects, and it's harder to do it um, when you're running such a big show.
Completely consumed
It's just,
within the show. Like I
it's hard. It's
said,
hard to do it.
he's into the show. Like when he was doing, he was into it. So like I'm sure it encompasses every facet of his mental space of creating. So
Because
I
you
look
do
forward to
see
what else he
some.
has coming.
Yeah, you do see some people who like maybe like I'll give you a good example, like Lena Waithe, like she created The Shy, um, and she still gets, obviously she gets producer credit, executive producer credit, but like I think she only like wrote a few of the episodes. She might have directed some I haven't seen, but I notice all the time like she doesn't write a lot of episodes because she's working on other stuff too. Like I mean, she wrote what is it? If you watch Master of None season 3, it's focusing on her and her, her character, and I think she wrote some of those maybe. But and then she wrote Queen and Slim. Like she's doing other stuff. So even someone like Lena Waithe, it's like she does amazing work, but it's like she wants to do several different things. And like Ava DuVernay is another example. I don't know how involved she is in all of her projects either, but she wants to dabble in a whole bunch of stuff. And when you do that, you might, for some of your initial episodes of your TV show, maybe you might be really involved, and then you have someone else who's really a showrunner. You might come in and out, and then you want to work on other projects. So it really depends on your focus. As opposed to like, I'm wondering how Ryan Coogler is going to handle, like he's doing Black Panther 2, Black Panther Wakanda Forever, and he's produced other stuff, but then he's also going to be doing the Wakanda series. So it's like that's a lot of work, and how involved he's going to be. But he obviously was somewhat involved in getting Judas and the Black Messiah sold as a producer, but he didn't write it or direct it. And then and Space Jam, he's like producing that, and the new Space Jam movie, and then also with Bitter Root. Like, so it depends. Like some of these people have limited involvement, but they want to dabble in different projects, and you know, focus most of their time on like a specific project that maybe they're writing and directing, or a show that they're producing. But I don't know. Maybe this guy was focusing most of his time on Blacklist, so it was harder to do other stuff, and now he can't. I mean, who knows? But it depends on how you. It just really depends on how you spend your time and what do you want to focus on when you're involved in a lot of projects. And what do you have to say? What do you want to say to the world, and how do you want to say it? Movies, TV, documentaries. You know,
And I was
I
going to
think
say,
it's
more
good.
importantly, just that idea of bandwidth. I mean, some people,
Exactly.
have tons and tons of like if I'm being talking about, figuratively, your mental bandwidth. Some people, in terms of how they create, they want to invest all their energy and time in a project, and others, they are perfectly fine, similar to what you were saying of spending a little time here, investing this amount of time in a day on this project. Some people, enjoy that part of it, and some people want to be intensively involved in just a single project. So like, they, in terms of what their style is, they rather, have a lot of their bandwidth or attention focused on maybe a couple, while others, they like to, they have that capacity where they just like to be everywhere, and they have that energy that they can just be everywhere somehow, it seems like. So with that being said, just switching gears to another story, story regarding Blumhouse TV apparently entering unscripted programming. So Jerome, you punt the ball over to you. Talk to us.
Yeah, I just thought the story was interesting because I respect Blumhouse so much, just with their financial model of how they make films. I mean, even though I haven't watched like all their movies or anything, but I just respect. I think everyone should really or any emerging filmmaker or people trying to get in the business, they really should study their model, because it's pretty much, it's damn near flawless, making low budget films that make a profit, or at least break even. But they eventually, they transitioned into scripted TV, and then I thought this story was interesting because now they're getting into unscripted. I'm not sure if they had anything else that was unscripted, but this was just new because they're teaming up with a Canadian company. I think it's ITV, uh, and basically
Yeah.
what's interesting is because it's a it's like I guess it's kind of like a murder mystery type of reality show or competition. That's one of their shows. So I just think it's interesting how you're gonna have that they're
Yeah, it's
adding
gonna be
that
called
genre to
Escape the
reality.
Maze, by the way.
Yeah, or but
There you go,
they're
Escape the
pretty much
Maze.
applying uh their
Aesthetic.
horror specialty,
Yeah.
horror movie genre specialty, their expertise. They're applying that to the reality world, and it's that's cool. I mean, to me, that's different, and it just also is a good example of, like I said, it doesn't matter how much you're into scripted or narrative filmmaking or TV shows. There's money to, okay, I don't want to say it's a money grab, but it makes sense to try to expand and get into these different avenues of entertainment, just like we were talking about previously with the podcasts. I'm sure they're probably getting into that too. um, but yeah, there's all these different avenues now, and it's like you can have a diverse portfolio of different media projects and content, if it makes sense, if it fits your brand and it's something that you actually care about and you're interested in. So they obviously feel like this fits what they do, the type of stuff they produce and they put out there. So it's just interesting that they're entering that space, because you don't usually see everyone enter that space. I mean, but I would say, because it also makes sense, because it's cheap to produce that type of content. I mean, compared to like making a movie or something, even though they've already proven they don't have to spend as much to make movies either and still make them successful. So it's just interesting seeing them enter that space, and you know how these companies are diversifying the type of content they're producing and distributing.
For sure, and I guess in reading it on paper, like, it sounds like another franchise that I know, based on how it reads. So let me just read what they have here. Now I'll pull up the story here. So as I said, the name of the show is called Escape the Maze, and it says the series will follow individual competitors who have been locked inside a dark and mind-scrambling labyrinth designed by maze architect Adrian Fisher and the Premier Mission Group, encountering a range of physical and psychological challenges devised to make the experience both frightening and frustratingly difficult. So, for all of my horror buffs out there, does this sound like a franchise to you? No, I'm just saying, on paper, it sounds like the Saw franchise, but if you put it in the context of a show, so like a show where folks can compete in, it still sounds quite interesting. I'm intrigued to see what they do with this. For those of you out there, because I know we were talking about it offline, Jerome, and talking about other shows that it reminded me of. You guys can let me know out in the comments, but I want to know, do any of you guys out there, and I know, Jerome, you said you don't remember it. There was a
I remember.
show once upon a time called Murder in, let me try to see if I remember the name of the show. It was called Murder in Small Town X, I believe. Yeah, Murder in Small Town X. And it featured it was only around for one season, so that may be why you don't remember it, Jerome. Didn't last that long. But it was an interesting concept where you had this game show, I guess you can say, and it kind of played like Clue, where you have this small town, you have these contestants, you have this small town, and it's populated by all these improv actors, and all of these improv actors are in essence like characters that are part of this story that they have created for this show, where there's a serial killer that is in this small town, and the contestants are put in the roles of investigators, of detectives, and they have to figure out who the serial killer is. And over the course of the show, you get eliminated because as you are going out to look at for clues, the serial killer, takes out, one of the contestants one by one until finally, you're left with the final two contestants that are able to discover who, that serial killer is. It was a pretty interesting concept. And ironically, I'm thinking about it now. I was looking at, when it arrived, it looks like, according to, and doing some looking up, when it arrived in 2001. So it is the 20th anniversary of that show,
Ah,
shy of a couple of months. Because apparently, in looking it up, it looks like it came out in September of 2001. So yeah, like to have another show like that plays on some tropes that we enjoy. As I said, on paper this reads very much like the Saw franchise, but I'm sure they're going to put some new angles or provide some new angles or twists to it that will make it feel fresh and different. But just the idea of having a show like that could be quite interesting. I know, and speaking of game shows, because I put it over on social media, because apparently, and we'll see what happens with it, because I know it's kind of still something that it kind of threw me off guard, is the idea of Legends of the Hidden Temple. I don't know if you guys out there remember that show. That was an awesome show way back when, that deals with kind of that cat and mouse game. They have elements of that game that's very cat and mouse. So where you get chased by
I think I remember that one.
different, yeah, where you have
Man,
like
how much TV did you watch when you were younger, bro?
a lot,
I thought I watched a lot of.
a lot.
I think I watched more movies than
Um,
TV. That's probably why. But anyway,
a
I'm
lot,
just
a
throwing that
lot
out
of
there.
TV and film swimming around in here. But yeah, a
No, but the
lot.
shows I laugh about, I'm like, yo, what show did you watch when you anyway?
Right. But anyway, I digress. It will be interesting to see, what comes of this show, and just off the initial premise alone. But is there anything you wanted to add before we moved
Nah,
on?
I mean that's basically what I just thought it was interesting how they're entering the space because Blum. I just respect Blumhouse and their model, and um, yeah, I think
All
I
right.
think they've changed the game. They'll continue to. So big up to
Cool.
Blumhouse.
Awesome stuff. So, with that being said, switching gears, to the world of business, still, of course, in the entertainment realm. Over the course of this week, news dropped that BuzzFeed would acquire Complex Networks for 300 million. So, Jerome, what are your thoughts on this acquisition that we had with BuzzFeed and
Yeah,
Complex Networks?
yeah. I just wanted to touch on this real quick because I thought it was just interesting. It's another good example of how these, especially these online media companies or just like media outlets, you build up a pretty big subscriber base and you're relevant to a point where a lot of people go on your website, um, and then you get acquired. To me, it kind of reminded me of when AOL acquired Huffington Post. I mean, which that was around for a while, and they were making a lot of money, and then they got acquired for a
Yeah.
similar amount. So I was like, wow, this is crazy that BuzzFeed is doing that, but it makes sense. I mean, this is what happens. You get a certain amount of money, or you can borrow the money or whatever. They got a SPAC to help them out with this acquisition, a special purpose acquisition company, and that's what a lot of companies are doing when they're trying to go public or when they try to acquire or help them acquire other businesses. But this was just interesting because I mean, I look at some of the complexes stuff, and like they have a lot of hip hop news stuff like that, no, I always thought like they're pretty good. They have some they had some good information and interesting stories, and then they have they have Complex Con, and I mean, there's other brands too within it, but I was like, wow, 300 million. I'm like, it just shows you the value that you can build for your outlet. Like, hopefully one day Movers and Shakers Unlimited, we get acquired for like $1 billion, whatever. So it's just amazing because it's like you build up it just shows if you build up that fan base, you build up, your you're just adding value in what you're reporting on or the content you're creating, and you get enough people, you get enough readers, subscribers, you retain that base, you can get acquired. And even if it's not like I said, it's not. I'm not saying that they don't have an interesting that it's just online, stories and stuff like that, and that they don't. I'm not saying that they don't have like something interesting stories and outlets and brands, because they do. But to me, it's just always amazing when you're seeing something that's like a website as opposed to like, when you see like, to me it's not as surprising when you see like an app, like you see like Clubhouse is valued at like $1 billion now. I'm not sure if they're gonna sell, but I wouldn't be surprised if like a big tech company tried to come in and maybe buy them. Like, I'm like, okay, that makes sense, but it's like an app, it's different, but you're seeing companies that aren't like, they might set themselves apart with their content and what they're doing as opposed to like the technology or something they're doing, as opposed to like a technology company that's creating something totally different. And maybe those might get acquired for a larger sums of money. But when I see like media companies that based on their content, and that content is so valuable, um, you know, eventually getting acquired, it's just really, it's inspiring and motivating to be like, yeah, you just carve out your niche, and people will come eventually. It's valuable, you have a lot of subscribers, you have a big audience, whatever, and then people will eventually acquire it, or if you want to sell it. Also, going back to what the Joe Rogan podcast, same sort of thing. He had something that a lot of people listened to, and then there was value there. So um, it's really impressive. It's really amazing seeing these stories. So it's definitely inspiring.
Well, we shall see. Because I mean, it's always interesting. Because I think I was telling you before about some of the entities that complex networks had, and it's always interesting whenever you have instances of this, how it changes the dynamic of some of the affiliates or the smaller components that are a part of the deal that you don't really think about, where you're like, oh right, well, like, how does that affect this company or this company, if since they are a smaller umbrella of this large entity. So it just in general, I guess it'll just be interesting to see some of these the unforeseen smaller things that might get affected as a result of BuzzFeed acquiring Complex, that I'll find really interesting. So that we can't really foresee now, but down the line we'll say, wow, I guess this is happening because of X, Y, and Z, and because of what has been decreed or told to them from above in terms of the direction of a given organization or a company. So, but with that being said, I want to hop over to we opened with a superhero trailer, and I figured we would close with a superhero trailer. So this week we got another look at Shang-Chi and the Legend of the Ten Rings, and we were teased to quite a bit of things, Jerome. So we were given a
Awesome
look at.
trailer.
Yeah, so we were given a look at, I know a lot of folks are saying that we saw Fing Fang Foom. I believe there's also a story out there that it may not necessarily be Fing Fang Foom, that it might actually be someone who, another
One of the aliens.
another person, another alien that's within that species, but still alluding to Fing Fang Foom. So we'll see. But still, just the idea of having that element included, and of course people talking about, was that Abomination at the end of the trailer?
That looked
We
like
haven't seen him since
Abomination.
right. I mean, we haven't seen him since Incredible
Incredible
Hulk years ago. And also I know a lot of people aren't really saying this. People are really like talking about Abomination. I'm pretty sure that was Wong,
That
guys,
was, yeah.
from
So that'd be cool if
Doctor
he's in there
Strange.
too. Why
So
not?
you have Wong fighting Abomination. So it brings up some interesting questions in seeing the trailer, because the thing that I am aware of. So I believe that in this film, it actually, in terms of the setting, that it's happening during before the blip. So before people were reappearing, which is why it accounts for the Avengers not really coming into play, and some of those other superheroes not coming into play, is because this is happening during that. This film is supposed to happen during that time between the the dusting and the blip. So Jerome, we have all these elements, as I said, and I'll pull up, some of these screenshots of the trailer while I have you, while you have you share your thoughts, but share.
Well, you're saying you think it's between like when everyone half got dusted and then when they
I
came back.
believe it's been shared that
Because I thought they called that was the blip, like the. But yeah, anyway,
Go
but no,
ahead.
okay, yeah, I don't know. I have no idea when it's taking. We'll see. I mean, yeah, that might make sense, or maybe it was before. I mean, who knows? I mean, maybe it'll be right. Maybe it'll take it. It'll continue right after Iron Man 3, where Mandarin's like, "Yo, you can't be using my name like that." I mean, I don't know. What's it called? Yeah. Regardless, I mean, it looks like because it's its own contained film and it's its own standalone film, which is still in the MCU. It's just fun seeing all these different elements. So, I mean, I have no idea. I'm just intrigued to know, and I don't mind being pleasantly surprised about when it happens. But I'm just glad to see that they're making some of these decisions in a more practical way regarding like the rings. We were talking about that, how it's like they're making it bracelets. I'm like, that's cool. It's less confusing. I know, we were talking before. It's less confusing for maybe the audience members who don't know about the 10 rings as opposed to the Infinity Stones. It might be like, oh, if this guy had all these rings on his fingers, would it look like 10 Infinity Stones or whatever? Because they have different colors and uses. But I think it'd be. I have a feeling. I mean, like, I don't know if that's Fin Fang Foom, but I mean, he's a big
And let
dragon.
me
I don't know
let me
why they.
switch
I
it
don't know
over
why
to
they
that.
wouldn't have him. I don't know why they wouldn't put him in there. Why would they show that dragon? So I think that probably is. If not, it
Well, here's the thing. I
could be
guess
one of the
my
other. It's
reason,
a bunch of them. It's not the only one. So
but I'm
there's different
saying
race of
here's the
aliens.
reason. Here would be my reasoning why it's not Fing Fang Foom. Maybe Fing Fang Foom is bigger than him and looks even more ferocious and more awesome than him, but they just want to tease the fact that that species is in the film. So like maybe they don't want to spoil what the awesomeness of Fing Fang Foom looks like. So maybe they have someone who is also a part of that same alien race, just to say, yeah, these characters are in there, and also to allude and to foreshadow that Fing Fang Foom is in the film. Because I know a lot of times, like, you don't want to, spoil something, that awesome in your trailer. I mean, you still want to allude to it, but you want to still save it. So let me
But
see.
that is pretty much alluding to it because you don't know. I mean, that's he's not an action. So that's what I'm just saying. If you've noticed any trailer that you see, I don't know. I don't want to spoil some other movies, but they
So I'll
show
put
a
it here. Here
lot.
we go.
There's a lot of movies that they show a lot of spoiling moments that you have no idea because you haven't seen the movie. I'll give you a good example. Tenet. There's a really spoiler scene in the movie that you have no idea about because you haven't seen the movie yet, but they're showing it. So that's my only thing. It's like maybe no, that's possible, but I feel like Dark Knight Rises is the perfect example. I knew when the movie was ending when I started seeing the scenes in the trailer with with the all out battle between the police and Bane's crew, and it's like when you're watching the movie, you're like, it hasn't gotten there yet. Oh, that must be at the end. You know what I'm saying? So it's like they try to maximize their footage a lot of times. A lot of these filmmakers in the studio, they try to maximize the use of the footage they have in the trailer. Now, of course, the best trailers, they don't show the whole story and they don't show everything, but they still could be showing clips of key moments in there just to give you an idea of like what the scope is and how epic the movie could be. But since we don't know what's going to happen chronologically, um, showing some of those small clips or these small scenes could still be part of integral moments that we have no idea about. But
Oh,
I
I'm
mean,
not saying that it's not
we're just gonna have to
integral.
watch.
I'm
That's
not
what I'm
saying it's
saying.
not
That could be
integral.
a non-integral moment of that character. That's what I'm saying. So he's just underwater, and then we haven't seen him in action. But that's all I'm saying. But
So with that said, let me wanted to cut also to this other scene as well. As I said, I know a lot of people were saying that's not Abomination. Well, here's the
it
thing.
looks like him. I think it
No,
is.
no, no. But I'm saying here's the thing. Here's the argument. So as I said, we haven't seen Abomination for years, literally years. I mean, I guess what? It's actually been more
2008
than a
is when he.
decade. Yeah, so
2008.
it's been more than a decade, guys. So I'm sure that they can explain it away as to why he looks more comic accurate now because he has, the fins on his ear that he didn't have before. So you can just say that he's continuing to evolve, because I mean, we don't really know everything there is to know about Abomination and how his powers work. So like, he could have continued to evolve, and that's why he looks slightly different now than he does in his, you know, initial appearance. But in talking about like the questions and what his appearance raises, and what the appearance of Wong's appearance raises, is, as I said, I don't recall where I saw, you know, where I read that information, but it, if so, it reads very well into this scene. Why would Wong be fighting against Abomination when Doctor Strange could have been fighting against Abomination? And that may be very well because Doctor Strange is not around. So, you know, you have Doctor Strange not in the picture. However, you know, with them fighting each other, perhaps, and I believe this is going to be another element too. I've heard this, is that it's going to play as a tournament, and the prize is going to be the 10 rings. So perhaps for Wong, in being a contestant, he's trying to win to ensure that these rings don't get into the wrong hands. And perhaps for Abomination, you know, it will provide us more insight into what he's been up to this entire time. Maybe up to this time, and again, I have no proof of this, maybe up to this time, he has already been,
Part
you
of the
know, a part of a
organization.
team, and maybe he has been recruited to, you know, help win this tournament, so that way they can get their hands on the rings. Because I mean, if we're thinking about how things like this have played in other films, like if we're thinking about the Pym particles, like we've had other organizations trying to go after the Pym particles throughout those films. So why not have it happen the same way with these rings? Because if I recall, if I remember correctly, like the 10 rings, like that group, they were after the Pym particles in the Ant-Man films. Um, so I mean, it's, yeah, I mean, it's not. I mean, it's not unheard of for other groups that have been introduced thus far in the MCU to pop up in other franchises when we have these powerful MacGuffins. So like in for some for a good deal of many of the films, it was the Infinity Stones. Now we have these rings. We also we may end up having, you know, other MacGuffins, you know, later, but at least it appears like in this film, that will be, you know, MacGuffin that people will be after from all corners of the MCU. It looks like. So with that being said, you know, in seeing, you know, all of these elements at play, Jerome, did you have any, you know, final thoughts on what they showed us in this new trailer?
And it definitely like I said, it really it did a really good job of just showing what his story is and where he came from, and his relationship to his father, and then also how he's in the, you know, how Shang-Chi's in the real world and maybe trying to get away and not be a part of that, without like giving away everything. That's the key thing for me. Like I
Yeah,
mean, you get a
yeah,
good sense of the story, but it's not like, oh, okay, I know everything's gonna happen. And then with these little cameos, to me, like honestly, I had to watch the trailer a few more times because I was like, oh, I missed the part with the dragon and supposedly Fin Fang Foom, and then was it Wong, because it was so quick, and I'm like, oh wow, and Abomination. I was like, oh really? Let me look at it again, because I just thought, because the thing is, there's another shot with like this giant like lion or whatever, I don't, you know,
right,
and I'm
right,
like,
right.
I'm like, what's interesting is like, is this all? Are they all part of that same alien race now? They're trying to say, or these are just some, you know, maybe there's the rings help create super giant animals in addition, because it's supposed to be like, you know, that dragon race or whatever. But I mean, who knows? It's gonna be interesting how they mix it up, and I just like how they've made stuff more practical, like I said, with the rings, and they're not making the Mandarin like a caricature, or making him, you know,
Yeah,
he's
for
more of like a
sure.
gangster. He's more of like a gangster kind of mystical gangster, you could kind
There
of
you go.
say.
Right, right.
Um, and it's good seeing Shang Chi. Also, he has to use those rings to fight back too. And well, one thing they didn't show is like he has that ability. I know he has that ability to like make copies of himself. So, you know, we'll probably see that. Oh, maybe later. But because that was my thing about Shang-Chi. Like I wasn't completely well versed in his character, but when I was looking up, I'm like, okay, if he's like the best martial artist, he has that those badass fighting skills, and then maybe he can make copies of himself. I mean, he's obviously a contender. He could hold his own, but it's like there's only so much you could do with fighting. It's like there's a reason why Wolverine is a badass fighter and is successful too. Is he has a healing factor. So it's like if Shang-Chi doesn't have that, if he can get a hold of some of these rings and that can enhance his powers and he has other things he could do, that's also makes him more formidable and that's interesting to see. But I would like to see him make copies of himself too. I mean, besides Multiple Man, I mean, you know, he would be that guy, I guess.
For
Even though
sure.
Multiple Man doesn't come in, so yeah, I'm excited to see this even more. This is definitely an improvement from the last trailer. Last trailer was definitely a teaser, and this is a better, more uh,
It gives us
a
more
more thorough
insight into
trailer.
the world.
It's
Yeah.
just a more thorough trailer that gives me, yeah, that makes it more engaging and more. There's more hype for me to want to watch it. I was gonna watch it anyway, but yeah, I'm more excited to see it now. I'm more excited to see this one. So go ahead. Yeah, good job, Marvel.
So with that being said, guys, that's going to wrap up what we have here for this week in review. I'm going to punt it over to you, Jerome. Can you tell folks where they can find you, man?
Yeah, definitely can follow me at you can put on there
I
JW
got you. Go ahead.
Bourgeois. Yeah, put it on there. Boop.
I got you. Go ahead.
JW Bourgeois 21 on Twitter or JW Bourgeois on Instagram. Definitely follow us on YouTube at Movers Shakers Unlimited. Also click the bell so you can get our feeds and notifications. And definitely like us on Facebook at Move and Shake UNLTD. Follow us on Twitter with the same hashtag Move and Shake UNLTD. And we're also on Instagram at Movers Shakers Unlimited. And like I said, we also have Patreon account. If you want to be a member, support us that way. Patreon.com at Movers Shakers Unlimited. And definitely, yeah, support, like, follow, subscribe, and let us know if there's anything else you want us to talk about on any upcoming episodes. I'll pass it back to you, Brandon.
All right, cool. Well, there you guys have it. Of course, I'm your host, Brandon Choi, host and co-creator of Movers and Shakers Unlimited. And then also, I want to, as always, I always promise to put this up for you guys. So every Sunday, we like to do a breakdown of what happened in the most recent episode of Loki. And as promised, like I have been mentioning in other weeks of the show, is that I like to do announcements of some of the guests that we will be having on each week's show. And I'll be using This Week in Review to make those announcements. For tomorrow's show, we do have two guests joining us to discuss episode 3. So let me bring them on. One of them is Sean Forney. So let me bring him up. So Sean Forney is an accomplished comics writer as well as artist. He has a 20-year career as an illustrator and comic book artist, currently working on a bunch of different projects, including, and I'll pull it up here, so All Out, Pooh Counterpoint, comics, and also for Lady Death. And also, in addition to Sean, I'll also have Bob Greenberger, who is the co-founder of Crazy 8 Press. So let me pull him up as well. There we go. So I'll have, as I said, both Sean Forney and Bob Greenberger both joining us as guest hosts tomorrow. So make sure that you join us for our breakdown of episode 3 on June 27th. You can catch us at 11 a.m. Eastern Standard Time and 11 a.m. Eastern Standard Time and 8 a.m. Pacific Standard Time. We will be once again going live here on our YouTube channel to give a breakdown of not just the episode of like the synopsis of what happened, but also to analyze, what we feel is happening with the characters and perhaps some theories of what's going to be happening going forward. So be on the lookout for that. Other than that, I am your host, Brandon Troy, host and co-creator of Movers and Shakers Unlimited. And you can find me right here at Brandon Troy ENT on Twitter, and also Brandon Troy underscore ENT on Instagram. With that being said, guys, thanks so much for watching this episode of This Week in Review.